Hey, everybody, JB with you today. Super pumped because I got a great one today. We are going to be doing an interview, and I got some really special people with me today. We're going to be discussing, first of all, we've got Dr. Jowdy, who is a clinical psychologist that wrote The Gold Medal Mind, an amazing book. As you can see, I've actually been really leafing through it. We are using this as our book study of the month at Morning Coach, and we just absolutely love this book. So we got Dr. Jowdy, who is amazing. I can't wait to get into discussion with you, Dr. Jowdy. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Really excited.
I love it. I love it. And of course, we have Roxanne Turner here also. Roxanne, if you don't mind saying hello, who is just an amazing coach and consultant and really executive function and ADHD. And so it's great to have you along, Roxanne. Hello.
Thank you. Hello. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Well, we've got Dr. Jowdy here to talk to us a little bit about the book, but some of the ideas. If you don't mind, fill us in a little bit about your history. I mean, you've got some really cool history of things. You've worked with Olympic athletes. If you don't mind giving us a little bit of a few-minute overview, if you can, that would be fantastic.
Sure. Well, it was 13. I came across the book. I don't know how it ended up in my hands, The Inner Game of Tennis, because I had been playing ice hockey from the age of 3 years old. I grew up in Niagara Falls, and I was a defenseman. And being aggressive, having a temper was adaptive and helpful on the ice hockey rink, but not on the tennis court. So I was breaking rackets quite a bit, and I think it was my parents who found the book somehow. And I got fascinated with the mind-body connection and read the 3 books on sports psychology at the time. And then at 15, I had an ice hockey coach who talked to us about using visualization training and picturing in our mind what we wanted to happen during the game. And half the team thought he was practicing witchcraft. And, I was one of those players that just ate it up and started coming home from school and on a cassette player, which is, pretty old school, listening to this 30-minute relaxation exercise every day after school. And that set into motion my interest in the mind-body connection and the psychology of performance, and my dream being one day to work with Olympic athletes. And led to, at the end of my ice hockey career, which I can remember like yesterday, which was one of the most painful experiences in my life, school became my sport. And I wasn't really academically inclined, and I wanted to stop college at that point because I was really in college to play ice hockey. My hockey coach said, no, you have what it takes, just use the same skills. And that led to going to grad school for 9 years and getting 2 master's degrees, a PhD, a postdoc, and then working in a lot of different settings like Denver Health Medical Center, which wasn't sports psych related. I was doing a lot of drug and alcohol work with non-athletes. And then I ended up working for the Olympic Committee for the second time because in '89, I worked there as a grad student, but I was hired to be the team psychologist for US speed skating before the 2002 Olympics. And at that time, I was part of the family, traveling with them, eating with them, on the plane with them, where a lot of psychologists would consult, say with gymnastics, figure skating, and come in and out as a consultant. But I was with them for 2.5 years, so I got to do interventions and see how it worked out. And I had colleagues saying, you have to write a book about this. And I had my own demons about writing. I had written as a team, I had written book chapters and scientific articles, but this idea of doing a solo book, being on stage playing lead guitar, scared the heck out of me. So it was a long process over many years that I had to apply the same principles and techniques that I used with athletes to overcome my own demons to eventually put the Gold Medal Mind together, based upon working with athletes since 1986.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, and I love that. So I mean, realistically, you're a pioneer. It's funny we bring up hockey because Tomas Fleshman's a good friend of mine. I play golf a lot with him, and he's a ex-Florida Panther and Blackhawk and came from the Czech Republic. And we just had this conversation the other day because he knew I was a coach, how years ago when he was just getting started, and I'm talking 13, 14 years ago, there wasn't much in the aspect of mental performance and psychology. And I think even in life today, we're starting to see it trickle over from sports into corporate. And we'll get into that in a minute. But I really see you as a pioneer in this field. You've been doing this for a while, so you started really getting involved in the 80s and you were with the Olympic teams in the 2000s. So I would assume there wasn't a ton of people doing this back then. And so you've had a pretty good experience over the years of really being a pioneer in this field.
Yeah, it was the late 70s. There were a few psychologists, Bruce Ogilvie, for example, and Tom Tutko, that were working with a few pro football teams. And that was about it. And then into the early 80s, there were a few more people starting to work in colleges and universities with some of the teams. And then in 1986, the Association for Applied Sports Psychology was founded, and that's one of the national organizations today. And that brought together people that were in the field, either had PhDs in exercise science, interested in sports psychology, or PhDs in clinical and counseling psychology, working with athletes. And this annual conference, the first annual that I was at as a grad student when I was at Penn State, maybe had 250 people. And the last one had close to 5,000.
Wow, it's amazing how this is starting to become such an important part of not only sports but also a part of society. And I found you because Roxanne introduced me, but obviously I come from football, a very aggressive sport, to golf, and now I'm coaching professional golfers and I'm looking for resources. And I found the Gold Medal Mind, and it's just been fascinating because I've done a lot of Bob Rotella's work. Golf is not a game of perfect. And then, but moving into this, you take it so much deeper into practical ideas and thoughts. And I assume that came from the foundation of learning with the Olympic teams and all you've done over the years.
When I was first at the Olympic Committee in 1989 with Shane Murphy, who was the first psychologist hired by the Olympic Committee. Shane's background was in visualization and mental practice. And I had the opportunity to write a book chapter with him because that was my thesis at Penn State. So him and I were using it practically, but embedded in the theory and research back into the 50s. Wow. And that led to me appreciating both the theory and research and mental skills when it came to helping an athlete with their confidence muscle or their concentration muscle, or their muscle to get into the zone, knowing about human nature and about the brain and what it takes, but then making it very practical and user friendly so an athlete could learn how to do mental reps like they do physical reps in the gym with weights, how to do mental reps. And then in 1999, it was when I started with US speed skating. We started right away talking about doing mental reps. And in the chapter in the book called Moving Steel, I talk about how to use weightlifting as a form of meditation, as a way to strengthen the mind, to learn to get into a zone-like state. So to become psychologically skilled, like an athlete's physically skilled, it takes mental reps to have psychological muscle memory. Like an athlete has physical muscle memory. There's just parallels between physical skills and mental skills. But, my approach and what I know about change as a psychologist, it's not easy. And it takes repetition, and you have to go to your sports psychology gym and do mental reps to
do that. And so for me, and let's get in the book a little bit, because I really appreciate your thought process and the way you do things, even when, making friends with Leroy, and you'll get into that. But ease of your writing and the way that you do this, this is a gym, you know, and I think you did that intentionally. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I got to tell you, as I read it, I find myself going every few chapters like, oh, okay, I get that. Here's the practical application. And again, I do applaud, you know, you had the chapter on the training and understanding, you know, just like physical training, that there is work involved here, but you break down a lot of things that you can do within the book. And do you mind discussing it? And also you put a workbook together that works right along with it, which I thought was a really great concept. Can you kind of get into that a little bit?
Sure. Well, given I've been doing this since 1986 and reading the books and going to conferences, I've gotten a good idea of what makes a difference between, let's just say, inspirational, positive self-talk oriented approaches when an athlete needs to be motivated or set goals or develop confidence. And when an athlete, because as a psychologist, I work with people who happen to play sports. Like I work with people that happen to be in the Colorado Symphony. So I work with individuals. So working with an individual, I have to understand their psychology and what is going to be required to not only improve in the short term, but improve over time, because athletes are not only interested in improving their performance, they want consistency. And consistency is difficult, you know, and that's why athletes will have a breakthrough, win a championship, but then have a hard time winning another one, because then the expectations and the overthinking kick in. And to do that requires mental rehearsal, mental practice. And the workbook is designed after somebody reads the book to read those questions and think deeply and rehearse in a way that leads to, I can use cognitive psychology terms, but let's just use psychological muscle memory. So an athlete learns how to get into a zone after they make a mistake. They're hard on themselves. They beat up on themselves. They take themselves to the whipping post. So they learn after they make a mistake, make a bad shot, turn the ball over, to take a few deep breaths, to calm themselves, go down in their body, use an image, use a symbol, maybe use songs of lyrics from a song they like. But then after a while, they just do it automatically. They don't have to think about it. At first, athletes need to think about what their goals are for practice every day by writing them down and then reviewing what happened during that practice. After a while, an athlete is just wired to be able to go into practice. So during warm-up, they are using stretching and warm-up as a way to get absorbed in the moment, put themselves in a state of self-hypnosis, to be thinking about what they're going to be working on in particularly. So if it's a swimmer with backstroke, some swimmers, the position of their head is everything. But they forget about that when Leroy strikes, pain and fatigue. You know, they tighten up in their neck and shoulders. So by thinking that way and going through the workbook and reading questions about, do I visualize through my own eyes? Do I visualize as if I am watching myself on a video? Do I visualize myself in slow motion? Those kinds of things become automatic as they have challenges with their performance. They can just automatically be able to identify, oh, this is what I'm going to do, just like an athlete can self-correct physically.
I love it. And you know, you're so astute. And you know, I just had a golfer this last weekend shoot a 74, 63, 74. So he set the course record on the second day. And then we came back and said, well, let's do it again. And you know what the answer was from him and every other golfer? Well, it's hard for a golfer to put two good rounds together, right? And that's such a horrible statement. And your book addresses that so well. And we're using your book, right? And what I would like to ask you is, in those situations, or if somebody's watching, and again, I want to move away from athletes to people here in a minute, right? Because I believe that your books are pertinent to an individual that's in corporate or an athlete. But if you were to say, okay, if I brought you somebody, what would you tell them to do with your books, right? How would they start? Or should they just read it front to back? Should they pick out a section? What would your be advice if they went and bought your books today? What would you tell them to do? Start with the workbook, start with chapter 1. Can you guide me through that?
Absolutely. And I say this by qualifying. One of the psychologists that I've known for 35 years that wrote an endorsement that I knew from the Olympic Committee that went on to do other kinds of things actually was loving enough to be rigorously honest with me. And this person, after reading several of the chapters before writing the endorsement, said, most athletes aren't going to read this. This is too much. This is too long. This is too intense. This is requiring too much. They want quick and fast. This is an Instagram, TikTok culture. They want it sound bites. Yeah. And I said, I appreciate that. I know that, but I have to put out something that I know comes from my heart that works, that if somebody does, will experience changes and perform beyond their wildest dreams on a consistent basis. And that's why after all these years, with all we know about performance enhancement, there's a small percentage of people that do it on a consistent basis. I mean, it's one thing to want to do it, but then there's another thing to actually do it, you know? So having said that, I'm going to go with my approach that tends to be on the extreme side, because that part of me is still alive and well, because if I didn't have that, I wouldn't have ever written the book the way it's written or published it, because once it was finished, I was satisfied just finishing a solo project and being happy that it was a personal accomplishment. But because of people in my life that knew I have that extra gear, they put that extra gear in me that I've done a good job of controlling. So read the book from cover to cover, just straight through. Then read it with a pen or a highlighter and underline and take notes, and then do the workbook, one chapter at a time. And ideally, after reading the book twice, you get together with other people and go through the workbook together. And in the introduction in the workbook, I describe in detail how to make a mental training gold medal mind support group, because, you know, two heads are better than one. And in any kind of change process, that's where support groups are so powerful, when you're going through it together. But it's hard to find enough people that are committed enough to go to the mental gym every day, to do the mental reps. But that is the ideal way. But if you can't find those people, you go through it yourself, but you set a time every week that is your mental training time, just like you go to physical training practice, you do strength and conditioning, you had food prep time, you schedule in time for the gold medal mind or sports psychology, if you believe it's that important. And what I encourage people, you'll see it early in the book, is make the gold medal mind as important or more important and your sport for at least 6 months. Treat developing your mind as much as your physical body. Make that is most important, because you spend thousands of hours physically rehearsing, going to the driving range, for example, working on your short game. But how much time do you spend doing concentration training, sitting and setting systematic goals, doing visualization training, moving steel in the right way, doing beyond expectation training. And the list can go on. As you know, it's written very specific with practical suggestions. And there's the chapter in there, dying to go to heaven. And that was from an experience I had with a Division I soccer coach at Virginia, who was on the Trinidad national team as a goalkeeper and was in the Trinidad National Army. So talk about hardcore. And he had written a book on goalkeeping in the early 80s, and there was a chapter on the mental side of goalkeeping. So this guy was dialed in, and he called me into his office to help the team. And I said, you know, Coach, how can I help you? He said, my guys, they all want to go to heaven, but they don't want to die first. So they want playing time, you know, they want attention, they want to be in the paper, but they don't want to do the work, you know. And there's a chapter in that, sure, you can have these goals to want to shoot a certain score in golf, or make it to a certain tournament, or whatever it is, make a certain amount of money or get a certain job. But you have to be willing to make your efforts as consistent with your goals as possible. And I make it clear in that chapter, no harm, no foul, if you find that your efforts aren't as consistent with your goals. If there's a delta between your efforts and goals, it's being honest with yourself. The gold medal mind is finding out who you are. And you might in that process find out that your North Star or your goal for a Division I scholarship isn't as important as you thought, because you don't want to do what's required to die to go to that heaven. And that's fine.
Well, and Roxanne, this is just a great segue, right? Because we were just having this conversation before, Doug, you came on, and that was, this is not only with athletes. Trying to find individuals, and individuals is the exact same thing. And so I think this is a great segue. We understand how to use the book, but if I'm not an athlete, we're learning that this mental conditioning, this gold medal mind, is just important in regular life. Because if you're not ready to die and go to heaven in your pursuits in regular life as a CEO, as a C-suite person going up, or as a solo entrepreneur trying to build your business, I think this is just as important. And maybe we didn't see it so much. You know, it's all been about athletics and sports, but I got to tell you what. Right now, we're starting to realize this mental aspect of things is critical in the real world, just not only in athletics, but in the real world. Can we just discuss that a little bit?
Can I add to that?
Yes, please.
So I don't know, most of you know, I work with a lot of college students and young adults, and their Leroy's might not be pain and fatigue, but anxiety and stress and perfectionism. So in terms of, I'd be curious with this approach in your ideal world too, when and how would people start thinking about this sooner, to JB's point of the entrepreneurs and the C-suites, that they're better prepared, even as a small piece of it? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. This gets to my answering many questions this way, and I don't mean to be judgmental of parents. I don't mean to be judgmental of the school system, but what is covered in the gold medal mind and focusing on somebody becoming psychologically skilled, being able to handle the challenges and the demands of academics, of social media, of human relationships, of COVID, of life happening to us, needs to begin at an early age. As we know as adults, life isn't all about being comfortable. We have to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And that takes mental training. because we know heaven's reward fallacy is true, that no matter how hard we work, how efficient we are, how little we procrastinate, how well we eat, how moral we live, it doesn't mean we're going to get the outcomes we want. There are so many variables out of our control in the game of life that make life so rich and interesting. And it's how we handle life on life's terms. And those lessons should be taught from the age of 3, 4, 5, 6. And that allows a child to develop an emotional immune system. I talk about this in the book. An emotional immune system to deal with the emotional viruses and bacteria that they're going to face in the game of life. So, for example, an emotional virus can be a teacher they don't like. They just don't like the style that teacher teaches with. Just like we might not like the feds and changes in tax law. Well, we have to roll with it. So that child that doesn't like that teacher, and that teacher has a stereotype of being too hard or being unfair and creates anxiety. Well, if that student has developed an emotional immune system, instead of going into self-pity or feeling like the victim and getting stressed, it doesn't mean they'll be immune from stress. They will quickly go, what can I do about this?
I love it.
Now, this is pushing it a little too far. This is from an athletic standpoint that I work with people on. You experience adversity, you say, try me. You say, is that all you got? Like athletes that had difficult during COVID because they couldn't train the way they wanted. We were talking about saying, is that all you got? Because everybody's dealing with this, and finding creative ways to train. So it starts early. It should start early. But then if it doesn't, those kids getting professional help, if the anxiety is to the degree it's really interfering, because it can get into the mental health end of the continuum.
I love it. Well, so, as we're talking, I mean, obviously, athletes, this is great for. We know that, right? We know that the athletes, this is great for. We're talking about now for regular individuals and now parents, that they should be reading this. So where can people find you? Where can they get the book? Obviously, we know Amazon, but what resources do you want to share? Where can people come and get information about you?
On my website, and the easiest way to find my website is just Google Doug Jowdy, Jowdy, and there's a website for the book, which is goldmedalmind.com, and then there's my professional website, drdougljowdy.com. It's just easy. Google Doug Jowdy. And on both websites, there's products. So there's an audio recording for the concentration training, audio recording for visualization. There's an audio recording to help you wind down to sleep well, because having trouble falling asleep is a big problem for a lot of people. People can email me through the website to ask questions. What I'm hoping to do this summer is do a Gold Medal Mind workbook training camp where I take people through the workbook. I have assumed everybody's read the book that has joined this, and we meet virtually, and we go through each chapter in the workbook as a way to come together to support each other, because what's helpful is people having discussion and normalizing this game of life is challenging, and being a parent is a full contact sport.
But just, everything is a full contact sport. I mean, just turn on the news, I mean, when we're doing this interview, we've got Russia and Ukraine, we've got COVID. I mean, there's something going on every day. There's my Shiba Inu's cryptocurrency. I mean, there's a million things going on, right? So I think the aspect of getting mentally stronger, especially for the next generation, is critical. But even for us, this is the time when we've got to work. And if you want to get woo-woo like me, which, I come from a metaphysical background, if you believe in thoughts are things and, kind of the law of attraction, LOA, then it's really critical that you get your mind straight, because what you're putting out to the world is what you're receiving. So I think there's a great combination of ideas and thoughts here. And, we could talk forever. Roxanne, do you have any questions or anything that you want to bring up before we kind of close it up?
Well, I guess I do, because, you talk about when the athletes are stretching and getting ready in terms of reinforcing that mental training, right? And I guess I think of people, in the business world, entrepreneurs, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that mental training, which we know is resistance. But like when you hear that from, the individuals, like what guidance, knowing that I coach with people, what guidance would you have for us when you hear, I don't have time for that, I'm not seeing the value in that? What guidance would you give?
Well, when people come to me and they say, I don't have time for that, the first thing I ask is, how much time are you spending on this? Because this is taking so much time. And this is not just a phone. This is a person. People are developing an interpersonal relationship with this. I have people name their phone because they have more intimate relationship with this than they do sometimes their family members. But that's a whole nother subject. So,
but it's true. It's true.
Don't you think, JB?
Yeah, it's definitely true. I mean, and I think, with TikTok, and they're figuring out these algorithms, that dopamine hit of the video after video. And I think it's a chemical addiction. It's not only a physical, but it's a chemical addiction. People have got to feel that connection, and they're not getting it in the real world. And I'm digressing, but that's what I worry about Meta and everything else. I think you're going to have guys with, with a bag of chips there, and they're just stuck in this fake world. It's kind of scary to me, but hey, we're gonna help solve the world's problems with gold medal mine. So that was a great question, Roxanne. So what you're saying is, you actually tell people to name their phone. I love it.
Yeah, because this is Betsy, right? And if you leave the house without Betsy, you're going to turn around and get Betsy. Betsy is that important to you, even though you can get through the day or the next 4 hours without Betsy. Like, you are heartbroken. You left Betsy at home. You can't live without Betsy. Sometimes you can't drive 20 minutes without spending time with Betsy and looking at Betsy, not only at a red light, but while you are driving. That's how much time Betsy requires. And you have let the slave become the master. So depending on the amount of screen time somebody spends, I don't buy that somebody doesn't have time to develop their mind to be an ally, to be a weapon, to be a friend, if they have let this piece of electronic take control of their life. It's as simple as, if you want to die, you have to go to heaven. And if you don't want to go to heaven and use no time as an excuse, I'm not your guy. It's really simple, because I do not want, time is our most valuable commodity. And I don't want to take somebody away from Betsy if they don't want to leave Betsy alone. I mean, I don't mean to be, sarcastic about it, but in my locker room, rigorous honesty, both ways. I want people to tell me if they think I'm crazy, if they are angry at me, and I'm going to be rigorously honest with them, because there are very few places in the game of life we are rigorously honest with each other. But that leads to change. self-reflection and being honest with another person, but Roxanne, with what you do and you asking me, people saying, they don't have time, you sit back and reflect and break down. And if somebody doesn't have 15 minutes a day to meditate, that is a concern. The soul, the brain thrives on being still. Meditation is as important as breathing, is as important as drinking water. And if somebody will give themselves a month of daily practice, 15 minutes a day, they will miss doing that. They will want to do it longer.
That's so powerful. And I think that's so important. And I think that's exactly what we're getting to today. It's like, do you want the red pill or the blue pill, to go back to the Matrix? But that's kind of what we're talking about, right? And I think this whole conversation has been awesome, because I was just, right before you come on, I was just talking to Roxanne. Obviously we coach with large groups of people, and there are some people that want to do it, and there's some people that don't. And you just hit that point, I mean, astutely. It's like, and this is part of wanting to do it. This is, I don't want to say bleeding edge, because it's been in sports world for years, but I think in the quote unquote real world, athletes, you're starting to understand the importance of meditation. You're starting to understand the importance of self-awareness, right? And it's really hard to be self-aware if your mental capacity is not strong enough. If you're stuck on Betsy, as you say, and you're moving a million miles an hour, are you ever going to be self-aware enough to know that you're heading to the right direction? And so what does that lead to? Over-medication, depression, anxiety, stress, suicide, and so many other harmful things. So I think your books are a great start for somebody that's looking for a challenge in this area. I think there's a lot of people that haven't been exposed to it yet, and hopefully we're doing a good job of exposing some new people to your work. But I think that's where we need to leave them. And we could, like I said, we could talk forever. What would you tell somebody, never heard from you, didn't know who you were, never really understood these concepts? And we've got to the point where Roxanne says, and I don't have time, but now you guys have convinced me I have time. What would you tell them to do? Where would they start? And what should they start doing to becoming a stronger and getting a gold medal mind?
The first place to start is to be clear about why you want to do it. Because that is important. It's where I start with athletes that have aspirations of getting a scholarship or going pro. What is it about that is so intriguing, that seems so meaningful, that seems so important? So when somebody says, I want to develop my mind, I want it to be a weapon, an ally, I'm my own worst enemy, logically, rationally, it makes sense why somebody would want to do that. But to really reflect, because the other side of that and turning your mind into an ally is allowing yourself to perform beyond expectations. And then it can create more stress when you start to be efficient and don't procrastinate and achieve your goals. So second to that is remembering it's all about practice. It's curiosity and wonder. And there's no scoreboard. Be careful of judgment, good, bad, right, wrong, win, lose. And it's day at a time. Okay. High performance mindset is not owned, it's rented, and rent is due every day. Okay. So you don't cross a finish line, you don't graduate from this. To improve your golf swing, you get out there every day. Okay, develop a mindset that allows you to win, to achieve, to be happy, to have serenity, to be peaceful, requires taking action to some degree every day. So those are just foundational, like philosophy and concepts. And then you start with every morning taking 5 minutes and sitting still, listening to instrumental music. And when your mind wanders, go back to the music. When your mind wanders, go back to the music, and know it's a psychological victory if you just do that. If you sit for 5 minutes, even though you might be thinking about Betsy the whole time and how you have to check your Instagram or how many notifications or whatever it might be, but just getting in the habit of doing that. And then if you don't exercise, going for a half-hour walk every day to break the cycle of urgency, of busyness, of monkey mind, whatever you want to call it, to prove to yourself there's more time in the day than you think, because this is going to be investing in you. And for some people, they feel that's selfish. And it's not selfish. It's an act of love, because as you develop emotionally, you will be more present for others in your life. And that's an act of love.
I love it. Well, what I'd like to do, if you're cool with this, is because now that we've got this, we're going to put it out, right? We'll get everybody rocking and rolling. And what I'd like to do is maybe in 30 days have you back again, because we're going to get everybody get out there and get the gold medal mind. We're doing it on Morning Coach. And maybe we can get some people some questions if you're open to that, because this is a great primer. You know, I think we can get a lot of people involved with this new idea of mental strengthening. I think it's so important. And let's get them into the gold medal mind. And if you're open to it, I'd love to have you back in about 30 days.
Sure, I'd be happy to. As you see, I have a little enthusiasm and passion about this.
Well, you wrote the book on it. You should. And you've been at this a while. So it's great. Well, Roxanne, you've been awesome. Thank you for the questions and jumping in there. And Doug, Dr. Jowdy, thank you so much. It's been awesome. And we look forward to having you again. Everybody get over the website. And again, if you just a quick note, just Google use the best way.
Yeah, Google me and you'll come to the website, and then you can email me through the contact tab on the website.
Fantastic. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. It's been awesome. Everybody have a great day, and we got more coming back with you. All right. So
yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Much appreciation.
Lots of love, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Be well.